Chapter 11 of Mental Fascination. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson. Chapter 11. An Inquiry into Certain Phenomena. And now for our public hypnotic performance. Take your seats, please. The hypnotic performance. The audience is seated, and the hypnotist appears. He makes a nice little introductory speech, in which he gives the history of hypnotism and mesmerism. He avoids the scientific side of the subject, except such parts of it as serve to arouse the interest of the audience. He points out to the audience that the commonly accepted opinion of the subjects being weak-willed, etc., is erroneous, and that so far from this being the fact, no one except persons having willpower and the ability to concentrate may be hypnotized. He mentions the time-worn tale that idiots and insane people, and very young children, are not amenable to hypnotic influence. And from these things he draws the moral that the ability to be hypnotized is an honor and a proof of one's strong mentality, rather than otherwise. This, of course, flatters the hyper-impressionables, who always flock to a public hypnotic performance, being drawn there by their love of the curious, and the fascination that such exhibitions seem to have for these people. The call for subjects. The hypnotist then calls for volunteer subjects. The audience does not seem to be in a hurry to respond, although some are found to be fidgeting in their chairs, and a few almost rise from their seats as if to go forward. The hypnotist encourages and commands, come on now, right up this way, come right up, etc. And the inclination to come forward grows stronger. Then a young man starts forward with a rush, and then another from the other side of the house, then maybe a third or a fourth, and then comes the grand rush. These first people to move forward are usually the paid performers who travel with the hypnotist, and their coming to the front starts up the impressionables and hyper-impressionables among the audience, and perhaps a few curiosity seekers. These paid performers act as bellwethers for the flock of human sheep. Testing and selecting subjects. The volunteer subjects, including the paid ones, are now grouped around the back of the stage in a large semicircle, and then the hypnotist proceeds to test them. He usually starts off by bidding the semicircle gaze at their hands, or upon some bright object placed in their fingers. After they have quieted down and have been rendered passive and attentive, he calls them one by one to the front and gives them a test for impressionability. He usually begins with the paid subjects, for he knows just what they will do, and their actions have a powerful impression on the others along the lines of imitative suggestion. He usually tries the falling backward and forward test, and perhaps the fastening of the hands, or some other simple muscular test. Those who respond readily to these tests are accepted and instructed to sit down again, while those who fail to respond are told that they are not needed, and resumed their places in the audience. The hypnotist must have reasonably sure things to work upon for his success upon producing a quick result, and he cannot afford to devote the time to developing subjects that the experimenter in the laboratory does. Finally, he has weeded the goats from the sheep, the former being retired to the audience, and the latter exalted to places of honor on the stage, having successfully passed their initiation, and now being accepted subjects. The story of the paid subjects. Now, just a moment here about the paid subjects. Some of them are genuine hyper-impressionables, who are fascinated by the mysterious nature of the business, and flattered by the position of prominence given them in the performance, and who travel around with the hypnotist on a small salary and board paid. The horses are different kind of people. They are out for the money alone, and are generally fakirs all the way through. They have trained themselves to stand pain and to allow needles to be thrust through their cheeks and similar rough treatment to be accorded them. They learn to act out their parts with a surprising degree of ability in some cases, and many of them, in time, graduate into the cheaper grade of variety actors, and a few mount even higher up and develop genuine talent as actors. The majority of them, however, belong to the cigarette type of youth, who is out for a good time, and who is glad to play his part in the performance for his board, traveling expenses, cigarette money, a little loose change, and the cheap notoriety of public performance. Some of the more expert of them demand and receive larger salaries as they advance in the scale, and a few star performers in the business receive quite good salaries, and earn it, too. These horses often display considerable ability in the line of suggestion, and really lead the volunteer subjects through their acts, the latter obeying the line of least resistance along the general lines of imitative suggestion. These star performers among the horses are often just as expert hypnotists as their employers, and consequently much of the success of the entertainment is due to their efforts. Producing sleep. The next stage of the performance is to induce sleep in the subjects. This is done by first inducing fixation of the eyelids, along the lines of muscular control of which I have spoken. Then suggestions of sleep are given by the hypnotist, such as, "You are getting drowsy, drowsy, drowsy. Your eyelids are heavy, heavy, heavy as lead. You are falling asleep, etc." And soon the heads of the horses and the hyper-impressionables are nodding. The impressionables who are not affected by the sleep suggestions are sorted out and sent back to the audience, until there is left only the horses and hyper-impressionables, including the paid performers among the latter, as well as those who have volunteered. Then the hypnotist has obtained that what he has tried for. He has a circle of hyper-impressionables and horses who will accept every suggestion that he may give them, and be responsive to every demand upon their negative imagination that he may induce in them. The daydream condition. But are they not really asleep, you may ask? No, they are not asleep. Their condition is one of a drowsy, daydreamy state, such as many of us have felt when lost in reverie, or absent-mindedness. They have had the feeling of drowsiness induced in them by the suggestions and influence of the hypnotist, and have had their negative imagination acted upon by him until they are in a state of dazed daydream. They know what is going on about them and realize the illusion which they are acting out, but are so passive that their imagination is partially beyond their own control and is induced and managed by the hypnotist through his positive imagination and his suggestions. It is a queer state. I have talked with many of these people, and I think I have measured the mental state existing in them. They are living in two worlds. Their wills are passive, and the negative imagination, or fancy, is most active and under the control of the hypnotist. The playing bear explanation. An illustration that I have used in some of my lectures on this subject may give you a clearer idea of the matter. It is as follows. A party of children are playing bear. One of them is the bear and goes growling, wagging his head, and showing his teeth in a ferocious manner. The other children pretend to be frightened, but after a bit they induce in themselves a feeling of real terror. The assumed becomes almost real to them. Children have very vivid negative imaginations, and often suffer great torture by foolish suggestions of boogeyman, big bear catch you, something will grab you when you go upstairs, etc. An understanding of suggestion would show the folly and criminality of such things. The terror among the children grows more acute, and tears mingle with laughter as they run from the bear. At last, one of the youngest runs with a shriek to its mother, and buries its little face in her lap, crying out, "Make him go away." "Why, that isn't a bear, Mary. That's only Johnny dressed up like one," says the mother, endeavoring to quiet the little one. "Yes, I know it is," sobs little Mary, venturing a frightened glance behind her. "But I'm scared anyhow." Well, that is the condition of the hyper-impressionable who is hypnotized. He knows it's only Johnny, but he is scared anyhow. It is not all a make-believe, as some radical iconoclastic investigators have affirmed. It's half real and half unreal. The hypnotized hyper-impressionable is not a fakir or a willful deceiver. He is a make-believe, whose illusion seems half real, or even more so, although less than half in some cases, the degree of reality varying with the degree of impressionability on the one hand, and the vividness of the negative imagination on the other. Opposing views reconciled. I have gone into this matter of the mental state of the genuine hypnotic subject rather fully, for the reason that the statements of the two schools of investigators are diametrically opposed to each other on the subject. The old school of mesmerists and hypnotists insists that the subjects are in a true sleep condition and are absolutely oblivious to all that goes around them, outside of their illusions, that they are acting out dreams suggested to them. The new school of suggestion, on the other hand, claims that the subjects are wide awake as usual and merely acquiesce in the suggestions made them, just as they would in any other, and are fully conscious of what they are doing, and are make-believe all the way through, from beginning to end. I think that my theory, or explanation, will supply the reconciliation, or missing link, between these two opposing views, and I believe that it will meet with the approval of many who, like myself, have had the opportunity of examining these people and getting close to the heart of the matter. It is true that many of these subjects will tell you that they were totally unconscious of what they were doing, but that is because in so doing they are carrying out the suggestions, express or implied, of the hypnotist, who tells them that they are hypnotized and know nothing else. A funny thing about these subjects is that each one of them thinks that he is the only one who was half awake, and that all of his companions were completely under the influence. Remember now, I am not talking of trance conditions, which belong to another phase on the subject, nor am I talking about the horses on the stage, who are fakirs all the way through, although contributing much to the interest and action of the show. My description of the mental state of the subject applies only to the genuine cases of hyperimpressionability in the daydream state. The hypnotic show. I shall not take up your time and space by describing the many features of the public hypnotic performance. The barbershop scene, the balloon trip, the baseball game, the hive of bees, the school session, and the thousand of variations shown by the many hypnotic exhibitors and performers, some of whom are artists in their line, and show a wonderful ability in the direction of making their performances interesting and akin to a vaudeville show. Nearly everyone who reads these lines has seen a performance of this sort and will know to what I refer. The principle is the same in all of these acts or performances. The horses and the hyper-impressionables accept the suggestions, and the latter are also impressed by the hypnotist's positive imagination acting upon their negative imagination through mental currents by induction. But even the most startling and complicated experiments are but combinations of the experiments in induced sensation, mentioned in Chapter 9 of this book, raised to a superlative degree by means of induced imagination. The experiments I have given you, and others of the same kind, are the building blocks by which the mesmeric structures are built, the style, variety, decoration, and stability, depending upon the art of the operator or manager. There are many books on stage hypnotism that instruct the performer in constructing effective scenes. It is a matter of stage art, rather than of scientific knowledge. The successful hypnotist must be a man of strong suggestive ability, one able to focus his force in his tones, and also of strong, active, positive imagination, and thus able to form a clear, vivid mental picture of the scene he wishes to be enacted on the stage before him. By forming this mental picture, and by using his will to project and focus his meditative energy upon the subjects, he is able to induce in them the feelings and daydreams desired. His success as an entertainer, of course, requires ability as an originator of scenes, etc., which have nothing whatever to do with his ability as a hypnotist. When both qualities are combined, the man comes to the front as a financial success. While the above has dealt solely with public performances of hypnotism, still the principles called into play in the private psychological experimental work are the same. In the latter, there is no audience to be entertained, and much more time may be devoted to developing a subject and producing interesting phenomena, and the horses are eliminated. End of Chapter 11.